The words slipped out of his mouth
We need to
before
get
he
out of
could
here.
stop them,
I know,
quiet
just hold
but
on.
sharp enough to cut through
Grab
the
that folder
silence
and let's
between
move.
them.
Someone's gonna
Careful,
see us.
people would think we're together. It wasn't meant to be cruel, just cautious. The kind of line a man learns to say when the world has already judged him too many times. But the woman standing beside him, dressed in effortless elegance and carrying the calm authority of someone who owned every room she entered, didn't step away. Instead, she smiled in a way that felt both unexpected and deeply unsettling, as if she saw something in him he had spent years trying to hide. And when she asked, almost gently, if that would really be so bad, something inside him shifted in a way he wasn't ready to understand. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the quiet strength of people who keep going, even when life breaks them, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Because stories like this aren't just stories, they're reminders of what still exists in the world. Ethan Cole had long stopped, noticing the stares. They followed him everywhere, at the grocery store when he carefully counted coins before reaching the cashier, at the school gate where other parents arrived in polished cars, while he stood in worn boots and a faded jacket, and especially in places like this, where he didn't belong. The corporate building rose like a monument to success, its glass walls reflecting a world he had once almost been part of. Years ago, before life unraveled, before hospital bills and loss carved out everything he had built, he had walked into places like this with confidence. Now, he walked in with quiet determination, carrying a lunchbox in one hand and the invisible weight of responsibility in the other. He was here for a maintenance contract, a temporary job that paid just enough to keep the lights on in his small apartment and food on the table for his 8-year-old daughter, Lily. She was the reason he never allowed himself to collapse completely. Every morning, when she smiled at him with that same brightness her mother used to carry, he found a reason to keep going. Even when the nights were long and the silence heavy, he kept moving forward, one step at a time. That was how he ended up standing in the executive lobby, waiting for someone who was already running late. The space around him was polished and perfect, every surface reflecting wealth and precision. He stood out in every possible way, his clothes clean but worn, his posture guarded. When the elevator doors opened and she stepped out, the air seemed to change without anyone saying a word. People straightened subtly, conversations softened, and attention shifted toward her. Clara Bennett was not what he expected. He had heard the name whispered before, the CEO who rebuilt a collapsing company in under 2 years, the woman who made decisions others were too afraid to consider. But none of that prepared him for the way she carried herself, not with arrogance, but with a quiet certainty that made others fall into place around her. Their paths crossed purely by accident. A stack of documents slipped from someone's hands nearby, scattering across the floor, and instinctively, Ethan bent down to help. Clara did the same. Their hands brushed briefly as they both reached for the same page, and for a moment, time seemed to pause in a way that felt almost unnatural. It wasn't the kind of moment either of them would normally notice, but something about it lingered. That was when he said it, almost under his breath, more to himself than to her. "Careful, people would think we're together." It was a reflex, born from years of being out of place, of knowing how quickly assumptions could turn into judgment. He expected her to pull back, to laugh it off, or to ignore him entirely. Instead, she looked at him fully, not past him like most people did, but directly at him, as if she were trying to understand something deeper than the surface. Her smile wasn't mocking, it wasn't distant, it was curious, almost warm. And when she asked if that would really be such a bad thing, it caught him completely off guard. Ethan didn't have an answer, not because he didn't know what to say, but because no one had ever asked him that before. Life didn't change overnight after that moment. It never does, but something subtle began to shift. Clara didn't forget him the way people usually did. Over the following days, she noticed him in passing, not in a way that drew attention, but in small, deliberate acknowledgments. A nod in the hallway, a brief question about his work. Moments so small they could easily be dismissed, yet they carried a weight that felt unfamiliar. For Ethan, those moments were unsettling. He wasn't used to being seen, especially not by someone like her. It made him cautious, almost defensive. He kept his distance, focusing on his work, reminding himself that worlds like hers and his didn't overlap. They couldn't. But Clara was not someone who believed in invisible boundaries. She began asking questions, not intrusive ones, but the kind that slowly revealed a person's story. She learned about Lily, about how Ethan packed her lunch every morning, with small handwritten notes because he couldn't afford the extras other children had. She learned about the nights he worked double shifts, about the quiet resilience it took to rebuild a life from nothing. And in return, Ethan began to see something in her that the world rarely noticed, the loneliness behind her success, the pressure of carrying decisions that affected thousands of lives, the quiet exhaustion she hid behind her composed exterior. The turning point came on a rainy evening when Ethan was late picking up Lily from school. Work had run over time, and the buses were delayed. By the time he arrived, soaked and breathless, he found Lily sitting inside, not alone but with Clara. It didn't make sense at first. Clara Bennett, the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company, sitting in a small school waiting area, quietly talking to his daughter as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Lily's face lit up the moment she saw him, but there was something else there too, a sense of comfort, of trust. She had already accepted Clara in a way that surprised him. Ethan felt a familiar wave of discomfort rise again. This wasn't his world. This wasn't something he could allow himself to get used to. That was when he said it again, more firmly this time, trying to create distance where none seemed to exist. But Clara didn't step back. Instead, she stepped closer, not physically, but emotionally, in a way that made walls feel unnecessary. She didn't try to convince him of anything. She didn't offer promises or grand gestures. She simply remained present, consistent in a way that slowly dismantled the fear he had built around himself. Over time, Ethan realized something he hadn't allowed himself to consider before, that maybe being seen wasn't a weakness, that maybe letting someone in didn't mean losing control, and that maybe, just maybe, the line he had spoken so casually that first day wasn't a warning, but a reflection of a fear he no longer needed to carry. The world around them didn't change overnight. There were still stares, still whispers, still the quiet judgment of people who didn't understand. But those things began to matter less, because for the first time in a long time, Ethan wasn't standing alone. Clara didn't try to fix his life. She didn't need to. What she offered was something far more powerful: respect, understanding, and the kind of presence that reminded him of who he used to be before life broke him apart. And slowly, piece by piece, he began to rebuild. If this story has touched your heart in any way, if you believe that even the smallest moments of kindness can change a life, take a second to like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Your support helps these stories reach people who might need them the most. And before we reach the end, here's a special request. Tell us in the comments about a moment when someone saw you when you felt invisible, or when you chose to see someone others overlooked. Because in the end, it wasn't the words he said that defined that moment in the lobby. It was the question she asked in return. And sometimes all it takes is one question, one moment of unexpected kindness to remind someone that they are still worth being seen.